Yeah, there you go.
Okay, all right, you want to talk Matthew Toe at 62 points or Dan Hollins at 87 points?
Welcome to the Rugby Rant Podcast Show, your premier North American rugby podcast. Growing rugby, one fan at a time.
And welcome back, everybody, to the Rugby Rant. I'm the big guy, Scott Ferrara. We got Rob, the Hammerschmidt, and below me we got Preston, the little Hammerschmidt, the ball peen hammer. It's every time Ty can't come, we got to call that emergency goaltender up off the street in the street clothes, and we all know it's Preston, the little hammer. How you doing, Press?
Yeah, not so bad in yourself.
Doing great. We're on episode 140, baby. And before we get it, yeah, I mean, we're getting close to 150. Hopefully close out the end of our international season at 150. But before we get into the rant, let's hit ourselves with the round of pitch.
When we pick up the ball, we also pick up a legacy. A legacy that stretches beyond your current team. A legacy built on the backs of those who came before you with hard work. And for those who will come after you, we promise it won't be easy. But we'll be there, supporting you on and off the field.
So I'm going to go first. I'm going to say my around the pitch topic is going to be New York centered. Over the past couple weeks, New York players have hit some milestones. 3 weeks ago, congratulations to Dylan the Butcher Fawcett getting his 75th cap in the MLR. Last week, 2 weeks ago, it was the 76th at home against Dallas. And this past week at ATL, he's at actually cap number 77. In that same match, congratulations, Sam Windsor, cap number 75 for him. And then 2 weeks ago, prior in the Dallas match, you had Chango Chanchwingluski, you had Charlie Hewitt, and you had Brad Tucker all hitting that 50 cap milestone. And at the end of the Dallas match, Rick Salizo, the CEO, took time to acknowledge the Butcher and acknowledge the guys. And he even acknowledged my buddy Jared Smallwood. For those of you that don't know, Jared Smallwood is actually the New York team manager, and that was his 50th cap against Dallas as being the team manager. And it just goes to show that a lot of these organizations understand that it's not just the players who put it out there on the pitch every, match day. It's the people inside, helping the stadium. It's people helping the team, guys like Jared, who day in and day out help them at practice, help them at matches, help them doing whatever they need to do. So it's good to see. And congratulations to all those guys in New York. Rob, what you got?
I just want to throw a big one out there. A lot of people who follow the league probably are familiar with this, but the fact that the MLR supported the U20s recently, the U20s had 2 matches against Canada, and they came up victorious in both, but they engaged in that donation program to support the 3-week USA U20s camp that happened in Charlotte. Each club, made a commitment of money to sponsor through Vertical Raise, which is part of the Fuel the Future program. Basically, friends and family or any other rugby fan can go along with the MLR and support the U20s by donating online to verticalraise.com. Again, the importance of this is the U20s, in 8 years, these U20s will be right in that sweet spot, to be in the mix for the U.S. Eagles. So we want to support those boys and later on the ladies who are going to be representing us when we have the World Cup on home turf.
Yeah, it's great to see. And my boy Kyle Sumption, the head coaching over there at the U20 Eagles, former Rooney Rooster, former USA Eagle, former I almost said offensive line coach because he is a football guy too. Forwards coach over at Army, national championship winning Army when he was coaching there. So I think he's getting these kids prepared, and you never know, in 8 years he might be good to step up in that role if we have a vacancy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I was saying off camera, I knew when Gary Gold stepped down that Scott Lawrence was the right guy for the job because he knows and understands USA rugby landscape well. We knew he was going to have a quality plan. It's got a long-term commitment. It's a long-term plan with long-term vision and goals. And right now we're seeing those bear fruit almost immediately, which was awesome to see and should give a lot of us folks in the rugby community in the United States a lot of hope for the future.
Absolutely. Preston, what do you got for us?
Yeah, I'm going to bounce off. USA is going on to the U20 championships. USA beats Canada. First match, I believe, was 43-21, and then this past one was 39-14. I'm going to give a shout-out to Dylan Fortune scoring a try in that game, and then Connor Devos and Luke Big Sexy Schaefer coming in from the Lindenwood Lions, helping out the boys. Just love to see, like, the U20 program excelling, even though maybe our men's program isn't doing as hot as we love. U20s has a lot of promise, which is awesome to see, especially young college guys that are earlier in their years doing so.
Absolutely. Good to see their success again, getting to the championships. It's gonna be some good rugby. I'm very, very excited about that rugby. Again, if you guys have the chance to donate, go donate. Scott Lawrence is and Kyle Sumption are begging for donations from us, so let's get that money out there. So my next around the pitch topic is going to be the postponement of the New York City Sevens. The big guy's a little disappointed. I got confirmation a couple weeks ago. I got my press badge, all my credentials all set up. Obviously we had the operations manager on, Rob Cornelius, on talking about the new $1 million tournament happening at Red Bull Arena in New Jersey. They postponed due to weather concerns. It was kind of odd in my opinion. I'm confused as to how they took this and kind of made it their own. So what the email I got was, unfortunately, World RFL will be rescheduling the tournament in July. See the link below. Thanks for your interest. And that's what I got. And that links us to a Business Wire article that's saying the air quality, it's saying World Rugby and USA Rugby and the RFL announced today it was forced to reschedule the New York City Sevens due to the worst air quality ever recorded in New York City during the Canada wildfires. I got to be honest, I live close, I live about an hour away driving to Times Square. We had terrible weather up here with all the smoke and stuff like that, but we're a month away. So I'm completely confused as to why they think the air quality for a month from now that the fires are taken care of, is going to affect it. There's people online that have speculated that maybe ticket sales aren't what they were getting this close to the match day. I'm not sure. I'm not privy to that information, but it is to me a little bit odd. Me and the Hammer and Ty have been doing this now for 5 years almost. And we see this happen from time to time. And sometimes it's an operational thing. Sometimes it's not, and we're not really sure. And, we may never get the details, but it's just interesting that they would, a month out, postpone, in my opinion. Very disappointed. They haven't actually rescheduled yet. So are they rescheduling at the end of July? What are they doing? Are they rescheduling at a different date? You have to realize, I think the first weekend in August is the PR7s championship. So do you really want to schedule during the PR7s championship weekend? And then are you pushing out to World Cup area where a lot of international fans are going to France for the World Cup? So what kind of ticket sales are you going to get? You push it all the way out to September. Not really sure. So very disappointed. Hopefully we'll see them rescheduled soon.
We're talking about clearing the air. I'm going to clear the air on a major issue here in the Midwest that was rather significant. Left a lot of people wondering what was going on. And that was the Chicago Griffins, and they were disqualified from being in the club championship final that was to be down in Texas. I spoke with a number of folks from all sides, the Griffins, folks from the Midwest, even spoke with player number 12, as I'm going to keep him by name. I'm not going to identify who it is because that's really not important to the facts and the details. Basically, the way it works, a player must play in a minimum of 2 sanctioned matches in order to play in the postseason. Number 12 played in 2 matches this spring with the Griffins. One of them was against the Lions, which was sanctioned. The other one was against Utah Warriors Academy, which, from what I understand, the Griffins petitioned for that to be sanctioned. That is per rule 3.4.2. The idea behind this rule is to prevent, a team from bringing in ringers, right? They qualify, from the Midwest, let's say, and they go into the national championship, and you bring in a bunch of Tongans or Samoans or Kiwis or whatever, just for the spring to play in the national championship series. So that's why they're doing that. Back that up with the fact that only one sanctioned match is allowed in the spring per rule 3.6. I believe the Griffins had indicated to me that they applied to the Midwest to bless the Warriors match. The Midwest kind of approved of their schedule, but USAR did not at that point. They weren't involved at that point in blessing the schedule. So the Griffins submitted a waiver to the USAR on Tuesday prior to the semifinal, which was on Saturday. This was past the 5-day requirement per Rule 7.6.3, which requires 5 days for an appeal to be heard. Due to the timeliness of this, a late waiver request was applied for, and it was granted, which is why you saw the message saying that they want approval. It's because they want approval for the waiver to be heard, not the waiver itself. So they won the waiver request, and so it was going to be heard on Saturday. But on Saturday, player number 12 had played. Before his sanctioning was going to be, appeal was going to be heard. The Griffins filed a civil rights violation claim on the USAR and the Senior Club Council. The grievance hearing was then Saturday night after the semi, and yes, the committee had ruled that player number 12 was eligible, but not eligible retroactively. In other words, was not eligible for the semifinal. Now, from people that I've talked to, and this is only from one side, because I reached out to the Griffins, to members of the Griffins, and I haven't heard back from a couple of people I reached out to. It indicated that the Griffins were told prior to Saturday's match, if that player number 12 plays, if he steps on the field, you could be disqualified. You could, disqualify your match because we have not ruled into eligibility. Imagine if you go to that Saturday night after the semifinal and he's ruled ineligible. Well, then you're definitely disqualified, right? So, I think there's some blame to be laid there. That being said, I think this could have been headed off the pass a little bit before. If the Midwest had stepped in and told the official not to start the match until the player had stepped off the field, and then, then they could play, and then they could rule, and then they could go forward. So, I'm not placing blame. I'm just telling you why we've got all those confusing mixed messages and what some of the rules and stipulations were. And it just, all around timing. And I think assumptions were made on both sides that just led to a real lack of communication. But I think one thing you got to remember, this is a USAR tournament, national tournament. They sanction it. Therefore, it's their rules that apply. And we know, being involved in any kind of organized sports, you're at the mercy of whatever organization is running a tournament. You have to abide by the rules.
Yep. I think, that's all we're really going to find out. We talk about transparency, and I think both sides have been as transparent as they can be, even though they may have different understandings of how things went down. There's always three sides to every story. But thanks for the clarification, Rob. Little Hammer, what's your last around the pitch topic?
Yeah, I'm going to stay in the Midwest. I'm going to go with Dan Norton. He is going to the Loonies, which is big for the Midwest rugby because that's kind of the Midwest team now. Big shout out to Matt Wags leading the charge with that team. Super excited to see what the Loonies do. It's kind of cool to, as I'm sure you guys have discussed in the rant and I've discussed with both of y'all, it's nice to actually be able to claim a team, not just because I know people playing for them, but because I'm from the area. So it's really cool to have Dan Norton coming through, and I'm super excited to actually end up watching the PR7s and maybe get to a match.
Absolutely. I mean, you have guys like Dan Norton, Ruby Toohey on the women's side. You got Aaron Gray on the men's side. You got a ton of people on the men's and women's side coming over, international and American alike, to come play in this tournament now in year 3, this expanded tournament. The big guy's going to be at the championship in DC in August. Come say hi to me. If you see me, I'll be around the pitch and up in the booth, doing my usual stuff on that. And it's great to see. And I think we're going to see a couple more guys come in, especially now that the NYC Sevens was postponed. I wonder if we're going to see a couple more signings for some of these PR Sevens players.
Yeah. Scott, I was going to ask a question. Now that we're seeing a lot of international players coming through to PR7s, just like with Rugby Town, do you think there's a chance that PR7s puts a all-star team into Rugby Town at some point in the future?
That's a good question. I wouldn't be surprised if they wanted to put their own team into Rugby Town. I wonder who they would get, though. A lot of the players in PR7s have their own club teams they play when they go to Rugby Town. So I would think that, the American guys obviously wouldn't be eligible. And I wonder if the international people, depending, it depends on what they're doing, what their schedule is. We do have a lot of crossover, especially on the women's side between 15s and 7s. So I wonder in the women's bracket, you would probably see less international 7s players, I would say, because they're probably prepping for 15s. But on the men's side, if it's not an Olympic year and not a World Cup year, I couldn't see why not. Why not try and bring some guys over, So, but anyway, guys, that's our Around the Pitch for episode 140. We really try and hit you with some good stuff going around. Glad to bring you some good USAR rugby news. Glad to bring you some good MLR news, and glad to clarify some stuff. This is what we love to do. This particular rant, we're going to go over our what we had made way too early playoff predictions, and we're going to kind of see if they came to fruition and kind of forecast out now that all the spots in the playoff race have been solidified. But before we do that, we're going to get a quick word from our sponsors, baby.
Tighthead Brewing Company is not just Chicago's premier location to watch rugby and enjoy quality ales and lagers. It is also a great place to enjoy local acts performing live music every Thursday and Saturday nights. Additionally, their Wednesday night trivia nights are something not to be missed. Tighthead is located in Mundelein, Illinois, and easily accessible for many Chicagoans, as it is just steps away from the metro. Owner Bruce Durr and the Tighthead staff are dedicated to ensure your microbrew experience is as tight as their beers. Bruce's love for rugby extends beyond the origin of his brewery's name. Tighthead is committed to supporting the rugby community. This includes his support for Lake County RFC and our own Rugby Rant podcast show. Tighthead's tap room is like the familiar rugby clubhouse in which friends and teammates can meet, socialize, and enjoy the wide variety of brews on tap. Regardless of whether your palate enjoys a good IPA or a dark barrel-aged brew, Tighthead can deliver. Hey, Chicago, when you want rugby, Tighthead Brewing Company will satisfy your thirst. Tighthead, it's worth more than a try.
And we're back, Rugby Rant fans, as we were talking about before the break. Rob and I had done our way too early playoff predictions for episode 136 when we were live at the Chicago Hounds versus the Onworkers match at SeatGeek Stadium. We came pretty close. Right now, you're seeing the Western Conference is solidified in their 1, 2, 3. You have San Diego number 1 getting the bye, Seattle number 2 with 59 points, and Houston coming in with third at 53 points. So it's going to be Seattle, Houston at Starfire for that quarterfinal, no matter what happens this upcoming weekend. And then whoever wins is going to play is going to play San Diego at Snapdragon. We're going to talk about the East first, because the East can have a little bit of movement. So we have the New England Free Jacks solidifying their first place by a lot. It was a big margin. Leading first place in the Eastern Conference. And you have New York with 42 points and DC with 38 points. Now, here's where it could change. If DC has to get 5 bonus points no matter what, right? So if they get 5 bonus points and New York gets no bonus points, DC will jump New York and DC will have the home match in the quarterfinals. If New York gets at least 1 bonus point playing Utah in this final week of the season, and DC scores a 5-point bonus victory against Rugby ATL. While they will have a tie in the point standings, New York will have one more win in the standings and thus continue to be in that number 2 spot for the home playoff match. So you're looking for DC to score a 5-point bonus win against ATL and New York to score no bonus points against Utah if you're a DC fan and want that home match. Obviously, if you're an Ironworker fan like me, you want New York to beat Utah by 5, with a 5-point bonus win. But if they get at least one bonus point, they will solidify their spot as the home team in that quarterfinal for the Eastern Conference. So since me and Rob did this previously, we're going to throw it to Preston, and he's going to give you his entire Eastern Conference breakdown for the playoff picture.
I think that New York is going to stay at home. Even if they lose and get within the 7, they'll get the point, which puts them at 5-5. Let's say OG gets all 5 points, which then goes to wins, like you kind of said. I just think that based off Utah's past performances, and then, of course, against my boys, the Hounds, I don't think they're looking too sharp, and I think they're kind of a wounded dog, which sometimes is scary, especially when the season's at its end. You're going to get a lot of trickery, a lot of kicking, a lot of fun. But I just think that New York's going to come out on top. And if not, they're going to come within 7. I think their attacking rugby is just so good, and their defense is good enough to hold it down. So I think it would be New York versus OG in New York. I'm going to say that the scoreline's going to look about high 20s for New York, maybe even 30s, and OG is going to look like low 20.
He's on a budget, folks. The post-college roomy internet is struggling right now. I think it's just a grade above having the string with the phone, with the cups for the telephone. So he's struggling right now, but hopefully Preston will come back unfrozen here in a moment.
Anyway, so he had New York solidifying in that number 2 position, and that would mean a home match in Mount Vernon at Memorial Field.
So Scott, I want to jump in, because there's that possibility that OGs and the Ironworkers flip-flop. But let's keep in mind that the OGs lost by 8 to Atlanta just, I think, in April. Mm-hmm. So they didn't really have all that good outing against Atlanta. And Atlanta is one of those teams that can show up on a given Saturday or Sunday and really surprise you. They haven't they've been a little streaky and just have had some inconsistency in their game this year. So, I just don't foresee OG being able to make that jump, being able to score 5 points. And I don't see, the Ironworkers losing that match they've got coming up. So
I don't know, it's one of those things where Utah doesn't play well at home, but are they going to be mad that they got bounced out with a tough loss to Chicago, right? So they got some fuel coming into that fire in that match. And then you have an OG's team who's going to be at home against Atlanta. And what's going to happen in that match? Hold on, Preston's back. Real quick, Preston, we're just going to finish up what we were talking about. You're having an Atlanta team who could not convert against New York, who had 4 cards and was at one point down to 13 men in the middle of the match to push the needle to win. So, I think it's the perfect storm for the OGs to come in and maybe sneak in and Rooney I don't want to say Rooney laid an egg, but I think Utah's going to be pissed off that they didn't make the playoffs, and it's going to be a tough match. Anyway, Preston, let's go back to you. So you had Rooney at home against OGs in that quarterfinal.
Yeah, sorry about that. I just say that New York in the last 2 games has put up 30 points both times. So maybe OG's defense, as it's consistent, they're letting too many points up where their attack in one game put up 8, in the other game put up 43. It's just too drastic for me to say that they're going to put up enough points to overcome what they've been allowing New York in the past 2 matches. So definitely going to pick New York. I'm going to say by about 6. I think it might be tighter because I think OG's on the up and up, especially if they win this next game, especially if New York loses. But it's in New York, so who knows? Not New York City because they're not that cool. But then I think they'll go on. They'll play the Free Jacks. I just think the Free Jacks are too hot. Like the big guy says, let's get hot, and that's definitely what the Free Jacks are doing. When they got Waka in there and they got their standout fly half in there, I think they're just 2 big playmakers. It's just too unstoppable. It's really good, really crisp, really sharp rugby, and I think they'll come out on top about 10. I I mean, most of their wins are coming out 10-plus points, and especially in the last 30 minutes, they're kicking teams' butts, and they're just putting points on points on points. I think they're going to come out with a plus 10 victory. If I had to pick it, I'd say about 28-18.
Gotcha. I don't mind your prediction of New York losing because I hate your guts anyway. So we'll just leave it at that. But no, yeah. Listen, I think you.
That's New York for I love you. So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think you bring up a good point. Listen, New England is the team that's rolling. They've been rolling all season. They're one of the teams in the Eastern Conference that hasn't had to deal with like a large amount of catastrophic injuries. That being said, John Poland was probably their biggest injury. Leaving the team, I believe it was a shoulder injury earlier in the season, but they haven't had a lot of the issues that Toronto and New York and the OGs had early on in the season. So it's a war of attrition. And if you're the team that can have the most of your starting players mesh and play well and be healthy, you're going to win 9 times out of 10. But I think that's a good analysis of the Eastern Conference. Rob, what do you got?
So let's go back to that Hounds New York broadcast, episode 136, and we predicted exactly where everything's sitting right now with the top 6, 3 on each side in the playoffs. And so we both agreed that it was going to be New England taking that top spot, and then New York and OG were going to be in there for that for the quarterfinal, if you will, in the Eastern Conference. I'm going to stick with what I said then, and that was that we'd see. I predicted New York would beat OG. Again, the score lines were OG got blown out 34-8. OG won in April 42-31, but like you said, I think there are a number of players coming back. I think the addition of Jack Hyten is huge, just because I think he controlled the game very well, both from hand and from foot. Very much a playmaker. Not that Sam comes on very well, Sammy Clutch, but I think it's going to be Rooney by 8, Aaron Workers by 8, and that'll bring a semifinal between New York and New England in New England. And I got to tell you, with a score line of 33-18 back in March, and with New England on top, and New England 8 and the Ironworkers 0 back on the 30th of April. I will predict New England's going to win and go on to the final. I'm going to predict a difference of 12 between the two. So we're going to see a New England in the final if they don't totally shoot themselves in the foot like they did last year.
Yeah, I hate the Hammerschmidt. It's okay. We know this. But no, I think it's a good analysis. I think you're right. It's about teams meshing at the right time. It's about who has the juice going into these matches sometimes. And, you have New England team looking for revenge to a semifinal loss at home. They know that coming into the semifinal with a break, they're going to have to prepare better and not just be all hyped up. I think that was one of their things, is they were a little too hyped up last year because they were in that position. And, young teams do that. It's about how you temper those expectations and play a better match. So, I want to add one piece that we can't neglect, and that is, Bowden Waka's come back in, but I think New England was real smart in bringing him into the 15 spot rather than the 10 spot. I mean, Potros has been playing very well at the 10 spot, so why disrupt any continuity that's been created? But you don't want to leave a guy like Bowden Waka sitting on the bench at all. I mean, obviously you want to use him. Putting him at 15 really gives you a nice option because he sees a field very well. He is very creative with the boot. And can control the match in his own way from the back. And he has, blistering attack, finding space, finding soft shoulders. So I think it was, a very smart move by New England to bring him in, but put him in at the 15 spot. I think he's going to be a difference maker. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to talk, like I was talking before when Preston was off camera, I think it's the perfect storm for the OGs to actually step up and maybe take this second place away from New York. And don't get me wrong, I think if New York comes and beats Utah by 14 points or something, that's okay. It could happen. But I could also see this Utah team being so mad that they blew a chance of beating Chicago last week that essentially knocked them out of their playoffs. Not going to the playoffs for a few years now is killing them. Are they going to come back to New York with a vengeance and really want to kind of put some points on New York as a statement match? So that's kind of what concerns me. And then, like I said about the OGs Atlanta match, it's the last home OGs match of the regular season. Atlanta's coming into that match. Atlanta also added the playoffs, but Atlanta had trouble converting. And what happened was every time they scored, they let Rooney score. And there was one point, like I said previously, when the Ironworkers were down to 13 men and ATL couldn't capitalize enough to really bring back that scoreline. So that's kind of what scares me on that end. So I'm still going with the Ironworkers, at least getting the bonus point. Would love them to beat Utah for the 5 points bonus point to really solidify second place. But I'm going to say Ironworkers going to play Memorial Field. They're going to play OGs. I think Rooney wins that by probably an unconverted try. I think it's a tough physical match. You're going to have guys like Jack Heighton, Connor McManus, Brendan O'Connor back. Unfortunately, it looks like Benja Bonasso is probably out for the season with an injury. I saw him the other day. He's in a sling, one of those immobilizing slings that you kind of keep your arm immobilized to your chest. So I have a feeling that he's going to go into surgery at some point. We also have Nick Mayhew back, coming back from a back injury. Tavita Lange, Chance Wengluski coming back from HIA. So you're starting to get that full team back on the field, and you have guys like Caleb Geiger playing great. You have guys like Manate Akui playing great, who had to step up, and Caleb starting to play tight head in the middle of the season, never playing tight head before, and playing great. So I think you're going to start to see them mesh. So I say Rooney by an unconverted try. I say we go to New England. I think Sammy Ice, the Iceman, Sammy Windsor, kicks one with no time left to win it in New England to get to that championship so I can go see my boys, the Hammerschmidts, on the 15th of July.
Yet again,
making a dual trip. My wife and my wallet will not be happy. So we're going to swing it back to Preston for the Western Conference. And like we said, it's going to be San Diego in the number 1 spot, taking the bye week. It's going to be a home match at Starfire, Seattle versus Houston. Houston is below Seattle by 6 points, so there's no way for them to jump to that second place spot. So no matter what the outcome is of the last week, that home match will be at Starfire. Preston, take it away.
Yeah, let's all just pray my Wi-Fi hangs out here for me. I love the West just purely because it is so tight. I think HTX can come away with a win here. However, I'm going to pick Seattle. They've won both previous matches by roughly about 6 to 8 points usually. People often say, well, third time's the charm, but at the same time, when your scoreline's so consistent, is it really? I think Seattle's just so dominant right now. I think they'll miss Heading right now, but he's a great player for him at 8-man, but they seem to be doing all right without him. So I think they'll be able to scrape and claw away, beat HTX, get through. I'm going to pick it about 25-13, about a 12-point scoreline. Where things get interesting is Seattle versus San Diego. San Diego is hot. They're on top. They're doing great. A huge win streak they got building up. But, I mean, the top 2 teams in the West are, pretty close, much closer than in the East. San Diego's got some stud players for them. They seem to be clicking. But, just like Rome, when's the downfall going to come? Could it come now? Could it never come? Could it come at the final? I would love to see this Seattle jump up again and go for their third championship and go be in another final. But I just don't think it's going to happen. I think San Diego is just too solid. All their different combinations are great. So I'm going to pick. I'm going to really say that Seattle goes through and they lose to San Diego. I'm going to pick it 30-23. I think it's going to be pretty close. So if that scoreline is not correct, it'll definitely be by 7, in my opinion. So I think it'll be a San Diego and Free Jacks final. And that one's going to be even closer to call than I think Seattle and San Diego would be. So I'll kick it back to you guys, and that's my prediction.
Awesome. Good stuff. Rob, what do you got for the Western Conference? How you got it shaken out?
Oh, Well, it certainly puts an emphasis on this weekend, doesn't it? Right, with Seattle and San Diego playing this weekend in their second match of the season, the first one being a 3-point difference. It puts pressure on this one being rather interesting. I think both teams, particularly San Diego, want to make a statement this weekend. That being said, if you're San Diego and you are able to be victorious against Seattle this weekend, it puts the pressure on in 2 weeks' time, because I do think that Seattle is going to beat Houston in the first round of the playoffs. I think that match is going to be I think it's going to be Seattle by 15. I might come down a little bit on that. I might come down to 12. It seems like Houston scores in bunches. They score either up front in the match or they come back late from behind in the match. But if Seattle playing at home is real difficult, the crowd gets behind them. They almost are another man on the field, just willing their team to victory. They always have been. They've got a great crowd. The environment is tough to play in. And so I think they're going to win. I think Seattle's going to win that, quarterfinal match I'm going to go by 13.
Does Broccoli Man, does he do anything for him or no? Just does he help him out in that way?
Not. Sorry, I'm not a fan of Broccoli Man, but that's all I'm going to say. Nevertheless, going into the semifinal, it is going to be San Diego and Seattle. That again, it puts eyes on this weekend, but I think it's going to be San Diego by 2. Here's the thing. Spoke with Danny Lee just a couple weeks ago before they're going to play the Hounds. And it's interesting because he said they had yet to play that game that he really felt like they could play. And I was like, wow, they have another gear. But a part of me right now says and I talked to Danny Lee after that Hounds game, and he said they still didn't play that game. Like, they turned it on in the second half, but their first half, the Hounds were right there with them. And it makes me wonder whether they have that extra gear that we believe that they might have, right? They play an expansive game. We see time and time again their ability to get that ball out wide and really score almost uncontested at times, right? The continuity that flows. I mean, we haven't seen, we haven't seen Ma'anonu score a lot of tries this season. He scored a few. What he really does well is provide ball and feed ball to his centers and wingers, right? That's where he really comes into play. That ability to just take on a tackle, take on two bodies, and then offload and create opportunities for others around him. And that's where I think that is just a difference maker for them. So it'll be interesting to see. But I'm going to go with, like I said, San Diego over Seattle, and I'm going to say by 2, which brings us to a San Diego New England final. And I am going to go, in spite of the fact that San Diego lost to New England, was their only loss of the season, I'm going to go with the San Diego win by 3.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think going into this, I think obviously Starfire is a tough place to play for Houston. It's watching Houston live against New York, I felt like it was one of those matches where New York may have just had more handling errors that allowed Houston to get in position. And New York has had a bunch of those games against a bunch of teams. So I really wondered, does Houston have the firepower in the back line as much as they think they do, or are they really just kind of grinding you down through that front 8? Danny Barrett has been very quiet, in my opinion, on that team, usually coming in as a reserve, not really doing much, in my opinion, to push them to where they need to be. Their backline play is a little bit lackluster. That's no shade throwing the guys in the backline, but Carlo Denisin as their 9 plays really well. I think after that, it's hard for them to develop things. They kind of play very straight, in my opinion. They hit the gain line running, but it's very easy to defend. So I think they're going to come to Starfire. They're going to hit that seawall, and they're going to kind of break along that seawall. So I actually have Seattle probably, playing scoring a big one against them. I got to be honest. We've seen Seattle play the last couple matches, and they've had quite a few tries called back recently for obstruction. So I think they just have to, if they make that adjustment, some of their score lines are going to be bigger than they would have been. So I think it's one of those. I think Seattle's going to come in, have the whole match, take care of business, and then go to Snapdragon. That's going to be tight. I think that the one thing that you see, and you referenced that first Free Jacks San Diego match was, how the Free Jacks played, and they have a great defensive line, right? They cop that defense. They make sure they're filling in their gaps, and they're very rarely caught out of position. Same thing for Seattle when they can get it together. When they're on, they're on. And if they're not on when they're coming into Snapdragon, then that's, to me, that's an organizational problem. That's a locker room problem. If you can't get it together for that semifinal match. So if Seattle can win big against Houston and take that momentum into Snapdragon, I could see maybe Seattle sneaking this one out. So I'm going to be the contrarian of you guys for this particular one. And I say Seattle wins at the death. Whether it's, they're up going into and just keeping possession, or, kicking, having the last possession and scoring to win. I think it's possible if they're coming in with a lot of momentum and they can stop, they can use that seawall to stop the forward progress of San Diego. Historically, teams have trouble coming off the bye week. We know that. And I'm thinking maybe San Diego is going to have too much rest and too much time to think. So I actually have Seattle going on into the final for the Western Conference. Playing my New York Ironworkers for a rematch of 2022, baby. So now that we know who we got in our championship matches, I think that's good enough for now. Let's see how things shake out, and then we'll come back, to an episode in the near future to talk about how that shook out and if we were right with our predictions. But before we go, we just wanted to give Preston another shout out. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you coming on. And you have anybody you want to shout out, Press?
Just all my Lindenwood boys finishing out the season, or going into playoffs, or finishing out and just getting another year. There's nothing better than seeing your friends go out there and kick ass. Congrats to you two. 150 episodes is pretty big. I really feel like the MLR should be sending you guys some rugby caps, but that's a whole different story. I mean, 150 is pretty big, and
Nick Benson is going to be on actually just after the MLR final, so maybe we'll ask him then, and then it'll give him a few weeks to prepare the caps for us.
Yeah, so that's my two. But yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on, even if it's just as an emergency backup call, like a booty call. It's whatever. It's not a big deal.
Listen,
I'm not mad about it.
We're gonna send you.
I keep winning Super Brew, and Rob sucks, and the big guy's not even there. Really, it's not a big deal.
Yeah, we're gonna send you the bill because as most people know, there's a dress code for the league, and usually the street guys come off the street. And they're not in the suit. So historically in hockey, they're literally pulling these guys off because they don't know they're going to play until the day of, or, in even a couple hours before the game. And they show up to the arena and they're not wearing a suit, and they actually get fined about $15,000 for not being in their proper attire, of which the rest of the players in the locker room by tradition generally pay, or the team pays for that guy. So cause they signed him to that 1 day contract. So it's interesting because Preston came in and he's wearing a fucking jersey. A basketball jersey.
It's my new kit. It just came in today. It feels great. Don't knock until you try it, big guy.
And by the way, a shout out to Preston. The second time this season, he has won the weekly Super Brew. So
I'm telling you, man, Rob sucks. I don't. He even picked my scoreline today.
A broken clock is right twice a day. That's all I gotta say. A broken clock is right twice a day.
Hey, it's better than an old man who can't even pick any Super Bowl scores right for two different teams he's picking for himself and the Rams.
Clock is never right. So
Yeah, I've completely. I missed 1 week and have completely forgot about it since because I'm worried about the playoffs because I'm a true fan. You guys didn't have to worry about the playoffs this year. Womp womp. Anyway, guys, fans, thank you so much for watching. If you want great merch like what Little Hammer is showing off, go to Rugby Shop, shopmlr.com, and Rugby Now to get your MLR gear and to get any gear you need for your club rugby team for the upcoming season. Get your gear now for the fall season, baby. Spring sevens are over. Fall season's coming up. get your team kitted out, get all that replacement gear you need, and go to rugbynow.com to get that. I'm the big guy, Scott Farrar. That's Rob the Hammer Hammerschmidt. That's Preston the Little Hammer Hammerschmidt. We'd like to say thank you very much, and thank you very much from the bottom of our hearts for watching the show, and we'll see you guys at the next.